Well, looking at the explanations that we've given so far concerning BIM theories and the stuff that we've covered so far. So we start a project, we go to the electrical part and move on step by step from here. So let's see how we can really complete a project course. So firstly, we should keep in our mind the fact that this is a sample. A lot of the AutoCAD files that you will deal with from now on will have this problem. So pretty much every AutoCAD file that you have will have this problem. And as you know, with the talks that we've had, you have to set up a few items before you start a project. You have to specify the exhibition plan and define the LODs, so that when you tell your employer that you have a specific LOD, they know what exactly you're talking about and know what you exactly mean by like 300 or 400 specified LED. We've talked about these issues previously and we will deal with them now in the project. We'll try to work with as much details as we can. Not saying that all of our projects need to be done in this way, but because we are teaching here, we need to work with as much details as we can in the shortest amount of time possible. So going on from here, try to pay attention carefully so you can learn as much as you can, so that if you have a project later on yourself, according to your contract and your employer demands, you could work properly. And as we said, employer demands are one of the most important parts in BIM bands. But just because we're working with the highest amount of details possible doesn't necessarily mean that you can't work on a project later on that's much simpler than this and deal with them. And I'm really hoping that you listen to this project carefully, step by step, and with a lot of attention to details so you can learn properly. Just a quick note that I have to mention about modeling here. You don't necessarily have to work the project the exact way that I'm doing it. Later on, you can use other methods that you want in modeling. In the BIM process, however, we have a pretty straightforward procedure that you follow. And you have a pretty much laid out plan beforehand. However, in the modeling project, you may say, well, I'm more comfortable with this particular technique. And if we have a precise output that can solve your problems, then it's fine. You can use your own techniques. And you might not be as comfortable with a certain technique that I'm using in a project. So you have a bit more freedom to do what you want in this section. But I also have to point out the fact that the procedure that we are using today is precise and has answered all of our problems pretty much. Because as you know, our team has done a lot of projects using this technique inside and outside of Iran. And up to this point, we know pretty much what we have been asked in our projects and how we can deal with those issues and solve them. So the techniques that we're working with here aren't something haphazardly made out of nowhere. We may have used different techniques before, but the previous techniques may not have answered and solved all of our issues and problems that we had to deal with. So we moved on to newer and better methods and we're using them till this moment. Like the techniques that we've been working with in the 2020 Revit package, in which we said, let's work the wall separately and draw the joinery separately. In our training courses from like 5 or 6 years ago, we used to draw the walls and the joinery together, which wasn't necessarily a wrong method, but later on it couldn't provide us with the exact outputs that we needed, and some other issues that I've talked about, like having too many walls, which can largen our file size and it's difficult to manage, and such and such. For example, we couldn't differentiate phase 1 from phase 2 using that technique, but using the newer process we actually can. And another important point here is the speed of modeling by our team disciples. And another very important tip that I have to mention before we start our project is the speed of our modeling. Our speed may drop down in modeling. in our high LED section, which is phase 2. But now, because you're working the joinery separately and then the sets separately later on, the mechanical and electrical team actually just needs the set file from you. So if you're going to be modeling a project and you need a high LED level and you need to develop this high LED level, you need to work according to our level of detail, because we did previously mention level of detail plus the level of information equals the level of development. And you need to know that the level of detail, it means the level of specifications that you have to deal with. And the level of information means all the information that you have to work with. You need to have these in your mind before we start the project. And as I was saying, if you do the set working file separately, and you're going to be working with a project like this example that we have, which is fair to say a complete project, which we're going to be discussing fully from here. So you need to be working the set working part first and then get to the joinery to avoid time expenditure, because you can work the sets in a quick amount of time, like a day or two, and you hand it to the mechanic. Then you need to work the joinery so that the mechanic can just do his work from there, and you can work on the joinery and then move on from there. While you're developing your own work, the mechanic can do his work as well. And when you're reaching the end of your development, you can just send the file to the mechanic or the electrical engineer so he can work the file from there on. And then he can work on the sets as he likes. And during all this time, you're working local and separately, and you're moving the file in a really traditional way. And if it's under the network, we have a completely different case. Just as you've completed the set file, the MVP team can come in, make a local file off of your set work, and then you can easily just complete the project from there on. So these are some of the steps that we have to undergo in our technique. And although I am working in a local case in our project training, but I'm going to be operating the working sets, so we can get to know the boxers and get to know their local abilities as well, so we understand how important they are in file management. So finally, let's get to the project. So we all know that if we have an AutoCAD file, our work will be done a lot easier. And according to that, we need to do some revisions from that point on. And normally when you've got the CAD file and you're working in it and you're going forward, you obviously need to respond to your employer's demands. And so there are a few tips that you can work with in order to do so in a relatively small project, because the case is different when you have a bigger project. And when we say a small project, we're talking about something that you could complete in a span of a month or two. You can work the project in the AutoCAD file despite a few issues that may pop up on your way, and you would be absolutely fine. And the reasoning for this is that you can deliver all of the issues to your employer all at once, and you would be fine. And after that, process will be started, some coordinations will be made, and you will be given a new plan. And you can do your reworkings and so on. So you take the problematic file and choose Save As, and then you can do your reworkings on the file to edit it. And also, in order to satisfy your employer and to let them know that their money was worth it, and to have them reach to you for your upcoming projects, there are a few things that you can do so you can guarantee your future jobs as well. So what you can do is, after you've completed the project and handed out the files to your employer, and obviously after that you will be given a revision plan with comments so you can move on from there. So you save the old file and you do your editings on the new one. And after you've solved all the issues, you try to compare the before and after projects to figure out the faults. And this is really where we get to the interesting part. For example, after you've completed a facility project, you see a bunch of errors occur. In the next step, you show all of the issues, you take them to your employer and you show them the issues. You plan some sessions and you try to work out the issues, and then you compare the file with the solved model, and you see that in the final model, for example, you have a reduced file size, you have less used pipes, and an overall better project. So the employer understands the reasoning for their expenditure, and they understand the quality of your work and your management, and they notice that they may have spent less on a better and higher quality project. And even though they may have spent less, they haven't had to deal with any revokings or any re-editings or redoings of the job. And the plan was completed in a much quicker time space. And they didn't have to deal with the problems of some contractor or any wrong purchases. And there wasn't any waste of materials. And these are the things that satisfy your employer and are very important to them, because even some of the most experienced employers have had to deal with these issues and problems that I already mentioned. And when they see that all of these problems have been done for before you've even finished the project, they will understand your quality of work and will work with you again in the future. And even if they don't plan any new contracts with you, the important thing is that you know you've completed a satisfying and well-made project. And your employer knows that they've been handed a world-class and high-quality BIM project. And everyone, including all other employers, will be benefiting from this fact. And this is pretty much a win-win case for all. And we're not saying that just us managers and BIM planners are the only ones that benefit from this. And even the people who are going to be living in that environment will be benefiting from this, because they know that they'll have a much easier job to do with upcoming issues that they might have, because they've been given a dynamic model. And if anything were to come up, they could assess the modeling project again, and they can do any revisions as they wish. So moving on from this topic and back to our project, as I said, we will be working with the highest amount of details possible, and some other techniques for which I will be giving you the outline of that you can use. And you can use any alternative method that you like, but according to the outcomes that we've had, we do have the proper techniques that you can use. And in the end, the choice is yours, but we do recommend you using our own techniques.